used term also, because anybody who's sad will say, oh, I'm really depressed, I'm really depressed. You hear this all the time. But how does one differentiate between normal sadness and depression?
Unfortunately, depression has become such a commonly used word that it has lost much of its importance. And in fact, depression is one of the greatest burdens of disease. It's going to be number one in a very short period of time. But by depression, we don't mean disappointments that happen in day-to-day life. I mean, suppose I didn't give my paper correctly, or maybe my girlfriend dished me or something like that. I mean, I don't get depressed. It's more like disappointment, or maybe mistakes that I made. So these are some of the symptoms that can point to a depressive disorder, which is what needs treatment.
Right.
Especially now, then if the sleep, appetite, work, they also start getting affected, then all the more reason that the person seeks help from a psychiatrist at the earliest.
That's right. Now, Dr. Desai, in your years of practice as a psychiatrist, what have you seen that has depression really been on a rise? And if yes, what is the main cause for that?
That's a good question, because depression as a disease or a health problem, as Dr. Smita described, is something that's fairly well defined for the last at least 20 or 30 years. And there are two major parts of that, if one might. One is the biologically, genetically caused depression, like most other physical diseases. Now, the proportion of that cannot and does not change too much. But the second part, which is part genetically linked, but largely circumstances based, psychological, social, economic, political. This obviously is related to the circumstances, changing face of the society, and especially the development of the society. And so there has been a definitive increase. What would be currently correct to believe is that in any population, about 3 to 5% of us will be clinically depressed so as to require treatment. Now that's a lot, 1 in 20. And the lifetime expectancy, that the possibility that any one of us might undergo at least one depressive episode is about 18 to 20%. So 1 in 5 people, So that's a lot. The proportion increasing is a definitive trend, and yet, as you were asking, Dr. Smita, it's also very important, it seems to me, in societies like ours, not to overdo the awareness bit or the over emphasis on everything being seen as a psychiatric disorder. So there will have to be.
You see more people dropping in now to say that yes, they are suffering of depression. And what has your diagnosis really been?
Lottie, now the stigma has become less, and people have accepted about depression, and they accept that it is like one of the common other diseases. And so more and more people are coming, and they express also very freely about it. Now, I would like to add little bit both what Dr. Desai said. He said very rightly about the increase, and in increase one more thing is to be taken, which I think is that these days, because of our family structure and because of people being ambitious, achievement oriented and all, the coping strategies are becoming less. Earlier there was resilience, there was people were able to accept things. Now they don't want to accept, which is causing lot of depression in the young adolescents, which we see very often.
Disparity, but how do we cope with it?
Correct.
See, how does an individual or a society cope with that economic disparity is very crucial. So nobody, even if he has 3 cars at home and 1 big koti, is really satisfied. So it depends on where you peg your satisfaction or dissatisfaction in life. And that's where what all these colleagues have said and what we are trying to emphasize is important, that individual resilience, as Dr. Manju was saying earlier, the family support and the ability and the, earlier, where did you have psychiatrists 200 years ago?
Absolutely.
You see, it's a new profession that's come up because people are more depressed.
True. Well, I think that's really well said. Well, folks, it's time for us to slip back. We'll get into the details of what depression is and how it can be tackled. So don't go away, as we are coming back in just a moment. Join us when we will be talking about organ donation, and you can send in all your questions at healthlstv@gmail.com. I repeat, healthlstv@gmail.com. Next week we'll be talking about organ donation. Now, I do have some questions that people had come up with. So, Dr. Bantu, there's this girl from Rohini from Delhi, and she says that I failed in class 9th. Since then, I feel a sense of worthlessness and have also contemplated suicide. Please help.
I think Rohini is a student who would be having, like what Dr. Desai mentioned, high aspirations, and in reality you are not able to achieve that. So I would suggest that Rohini should first look into, number one, what his actual potentiality is. Number two, it would be how much effort she has put into that. And also these days it's very important, because students, they spend lot of time on mobile phones.
That's right.
And wasting time on other activities and not actually studying. And also